I never thought I would trade the snow-laden streets of Moscow for the humidity and chaos of Cebu. In my life back home, I had everything, or at least I thought I did. Wealth, prestige, a penthouse with a skyline view, a closet full of designer gowns, and a social calendar that made other women jealous. But the more I tried to fill the gaps in my life with things, the emptier I felt. My life had become an endless loop of parties and meetings, of superficial laughter and shallow connections. I was beautiful, yes, but in the mirror, I could see a weariness that no lipstick could hide. So I booked a ticket to the Philippines, almost on impulse. My friends in Moscow laughed when I told them. Cebu? Why not Paris or Bali? They asked. But I didn't want luxury resorts or curated experiences. I wanted to feel alive again. I wanted chaos, unpredictability, and perhaps the chance to lose myself completely. I arrived in Cebu on a sunny morning, the air sticky with humidity and the scent of the sea mixing with the aroma of street food. The contrast was immediate. The heat pressed against my skin, my breath felt thick, and the sun was blinding. I had never experienced a tropical climate like this. I hailed a taxi and tried to explain to the driver that I wanted to explore the local neighborhoods, not the tourist spots. He chuckled, nodding like he understood, though I suspected he had no idea. The city was alive in a way Moscow never was. The streets were chaotic, filled with jeepneys honking, motorcycles weaving between cars, and vendors selling everything from tropical fruits to fried snacks. At first, I felt overwhelmed. I clutched my designer bag close, hoping it would protect me somehow from the disarray. But as I walked through the local markets, observing the vibrant colors and hearing snippets of Tagalog, I began to feel a strange sense of belonging. Not because I understood everything, but because life here was unpolished, raw, and real. I met my first Filipino friend, Mia, almost by accident. She ran a small souvenir shop, laughing loudly as she tried to sell me a hand-woven basket. I barely understood her at first, and she didn't speak much English, but somehow we connected. There was warmth in her eyes that made me feel like I didn't need to pretend. That was the first lesson I learned in Cebu. Here, people didn't hide behind masks. Their struggles, their laughter, their kindness, it was all visible, and it was beautiful. It was Mia who suggested I try running a small cafe. "You love coffee, yes?" she asked. I laughed. I did love coffee. In Moscow, I had sipped lattes in cafes where the staff barely smiled and the clientele judged every sip I took. Here, coffee was communal. People lingered, talked loudly, argued, laughed, and sometimes sang. Mia insisted I could make a difference with just a small space and good coffee. I hesitated at first. I wasn't a businesswoman. I was a socialite who occasionally enjoyed the thrill of attending charity events. But there was something about the idea that ignited a spark in me. I wanted to create a place where people could gather, where warmth wasn't just a metaphor. I found a tiny space in a narrow street lined with mangroves and small houses. It wasn't glamorous. The paint was peeling, the floor uneven, and the windows rattled when the wind blew. But I saw potential. I invested my savings, far less than what I had spent on a single dress in Moscow, and began remodeling. I painted the walls bright colors, installed mismatched tables that Mia insisted were charming, and stocked the shelves with local pastries. Every day I learned something new. How to bargain for supplies, how to coax the old espresso machine to work, how to greet people with a smile even when my heart felt heavy. The locals were skeptical at first. They couldn't understand why a blonde Russian woman would come all the way here to open a cafe in their humble neighborhood. Some whispered that I would leave in a month, tired of the heat and the mosquitoes. But slowly, they came. Fishermen stopped by for their morning coffee, mothers with children in tow lingered for snacks, and teenagers played guitar in the corner, adding melody to the aroma of brewing coffee. It became more than a business. It became a heartbeat in the neighborhood. Life felt renewed. I woke up before sunrise, walked to the local market for fresh fruits, chatted with vendors, and returned to brew coffee that made people smile. The simplicity was intoxicating. I realized that happiness wasn't about luxury or appearances. It was about connection. I had wealth, yes, but here in Cebu, it was useless. What mattered was kindness, community, and being present. Then, the warnings came. Typhoon season was approaching. Locals spoke of it casually, as if it were a minor inconvenience, but I could see the fear in their eyes. I tried to prepare my café as best as I could, reinforcing doors, stacking sandbags, and storing extra supplies. Still, nothing could truly prepare me for the storm that would change everything. It came at night. The wind howled like a living creature, rattling windows, tearing branches from trees, and tossing debris into the streets. Rain fell in sheets, drenching everything in a matter of minutes. I huddled in a corner of the cafe, my heart pounding, listening to the shouts and screams outside. Boats slammed against the pier, trees fell like matchsticks, and the streets became rivers. I had never experienced fear like this, not in Moscow, not in my life of luxury. Here, fear was tangible, close, and undeniable. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving destruction in its wake. My cafe was flooded. The tables, chairs, and equipment were ruined. The walls were streaked with mud, and everything I had poured my heart into seemed lost. I sat in the middle of the space, staring at the wreckage, feeling a grief deeper than anything I had ever known. I had left my life of luxury to find happiness, and yet, in a matter of hours, it was gone. But even in the devastation, something remarkable happened. My neighbors arrived, barefoot, muddy, carrying brooms and buckets. They didn't offer money or sympathy, they offered their hands. Fishermen, mothers, teenagers, elders, they all pitched in, cleaning, repairing, and salvaging what they could. I had come to Cebu to escape isolation, and here, in the aftermath of disaster, I felt the true warmth of community. That day, I realized something profound. Life was unpredictable, painful, and fleeting, but it was also beautiful in ways I had never known. My cafe might have been destroyed, my wealth irrelevant in the face of nature's fury, but the bonds I had formed, the lessons I had learned, and the love I had found in unexpected places were indestructible. As I watched the community work together, singing, laughing, and even joking amidst the mud and ruin, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the fragile, superficial hope of luxury and comfort, but the deep, unshakable hope of human resilience. I knew, even as I stood in the middle of that flooded cafe, that I would rebuild. Not because I had money or status, but because I had something far more powerful: connection, purpose, and love. The first days after the storm were surreal. The streets were still rivers, the wind had shredded everything in its path, and the pungent smell of wet mud and decay lingered. I walked through my flooded cafe, picking up broken mugs and soaked napkins, trying to recognize the space I had once poured my heart into. It was heartbreaking. I wanted to give up. I thought of Moscow, the warmth of my penthouse, the comfort of predictability, and for a fleeting moment, I felt the pull to leave. But every time I looked outside, I saw them, the community, my neighbors, now friends, who didn't care about my wealth or my accent, who worked tirelessly in the mud, laughing despite the destruction. They offered hands, smiles, and even food. A mother handed me a plate of freshly cooked rice and grilled fish, while her children helped me mop the waterlogged floor. "You cannot rebuild without energy," she said, and I realized she was right. I was not alone. The rebuilding process began in earnest. We salvaged whatever we could: a few chairs, some tables, my espresso machine that miraculously survived, and the shelves that hadn't collapsed. Then came the real work: repainting, patching walls, replacing broken equipment, and restocking ingredients. Every day was exhausting, but also transformative. I learned the value of patience and perseverance in ways my life in Moscow could never teach me. Here, each nail I hammered, each bucket I carried, felt purposeful. I also learned humility. I had thought wealth could solve everything, but money alone could not rebuild trust, relationships, or a sense of belonging. The local carpenters taught me to measure twice and cut once, to respect wood and structure. The women taught me how to prepare local dishes efficiently so we could feed the volunteers who came to help. Even the children had roles, carrying small tools, sweeping floors, and keeping spirits high with their laughter. Watching them reminded me of the simple joy of contributing to something bigger than myself. I began documenting the process, not for social media, but for myself. I wanted to remember the lessons of resilience, the faces of those who helped me, the smiles amidst the mud and ruin. The camera captured moments of tenderness, an elderly man handing me a broom, a little girl showing me how to safely carry a chair, a group of teenagers singing while mopping. These were the images I carried in my heart, proof that life, no matter how chaotic or painful, always offered beauty. One day, while we were repainting the walls, I met Ramon. He was a local fisherman, wiry and strong, with eyes that reflected the sea he had spent his life on. Ramon had been helping his neighbors since dawn, balancing buckets of water and debris with ease. He noticed me struggling with a heavy plank and came over. "Here, let me help," he said, smiling. There was no pride, no arrogance, just kindness and efficiency. Over the weeks, Ramon became my anchor in Cebu. He taught me to fish, showing me how to cast nets and understand the tides. He laughed at my clumsy attempts to navigate the mangrove-lined canals and even brought me coconuts he had cracked open himself. We shared stories of our pasts, his hardships, the storms he had survived, my sheltered life in Moscow. I realized that vulnerability was a bridge to connection. The more I shared, the deeper our bond grew. He never judged me for being rich, nor did I judge him for being simple. We were simply two human beings learning to heal through each other. Business slowly returned. My cafe, though smaller and humbler than before, began to thrive again. Tourists discovered the charm of a small, brightly colored cafe in the heart of Cebu's neighborhoods, and locals returned, bringing friends and family. I experimented with combining Russian flavors with Filipino dishes, borscht with a hint of calamansi, pierogi stuffed with local mango and coconut, and honey-drizzled pastries inspired by Filipino delicacies. It became a fusion of our worlds, a symbol of collaboration, adaptation, and respect. Even the challenges couldn't dampen my spirit. Another typhoon warning came a month later. This time, I was prepared, not just with supplies, but with the knowledge that we were stronger together. We reinforced the cafe, organized evacuation plans, and created small teams to help those in need across the neighborhood. The storm passed with minimal damage, and I realized I no longer feared nature's fury in the same way. I had learned to trust in people, in community, and in my own resilience. Through this experience, I discovered the Filipino concept of Bayanihan, the spirit of communal unity and helping each other without expecting anything in return. It wasn't just a word I had heard in travel guides. It was a living, breathing force I felt in every interaction. It reshaped my understanding of life, success, and purpose. I no longer measured my worth by money or status, but by the lives I touched and the connections I nurtured. I also discovered a deeper part of myself. The fear and isolation that had once defined me dissolved under the warmth of community and the unpredictability of life in Cebu. I had left Moscow to escape emptiness, and here, amidst chaos, mud, and laughter, I found meaning. I began volunteering in local schools, teaching children simple English and Russian phrases, and helping organize small community events. Each smile I received, each thank you whispered in Tagalog, felt like sunlight breaking through the storm clouds of my past. Ramon and I grew closer, sharing quiet evenings on the beach after long days of work. We talked about dreams, fears, and the future. I realized that love was not just about passion or attraction. It was about shared struggle, mutual respect, and the willingness to rebuild, together, after life's storms. And yet, life had more lessons for me. Even as we rebuilt the cafe and strengthened community bonds, I faced internal battles, memories of my past, doubts about staying in a place so far from my comfort zone, and the pressure of running a business I had never imagined managing. I had to confront my own limitations, question my motivations, and redefine what it meant to live fully. It wasn't easy. Some nights, I cried quietly in the back room of the cafe, feeling the weight of responsibility and longing for a life I had left behind. But each morning, I woke to the sound of birds, laughter, and the gentle waves, a reminder that life continued, and so must I. By the end of the second month, my cafe was fully restored, brighter and warmer than before. But more than that, I had transformed. The disaster that had seemed like the end was actually a beginning, a chance to rebuild not just a business, but a life grounded in purpose, empathy, and connection. The people of Cebu had taught me the meaning of resilience, and in turn, I had learned to give back, to share, and to love more deeply than I ever had in Moscow. Every corner of the cafe now told a story. The little mural painted by children, the photographs of fishermen, and vendors who had helped rebuild, the handmade cushions gifted by neighbors. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. It was a reflection of the beauty of imperfection, of collaboration, and of life lived fully. It had been 6 months since the first storm. My cafe was thriving, the community had embraced me fully, and Ramon and I had grown inseparable. I had come to Cebu seeking renewal, and in many ways I had found it. But life, as I was learning, had a way of testing even the strongest resolve. The rainy season that year had been unusually intense. Heavy clouds loomed over the city for days, and the air was thick with humidity and foreboding. The locals whispered about an incoming typhoon, stronger than anything they had seen in years. I felt a knot in my stomach. We had rebuilt once before. Could we endure another calamity? The warnings came on the radio and via text messages. Residents began boarding windows, stacking sandbags, and moving furniture to higher ground. Ramon and I worked tirelessly, helping neighbors and securing the cafe. The storm arrived at night, ferocious and merciless. Wind shrieked like a banshee, rain battered the streets, and floodwaters surged through the neighborhoods. This time, the water rose faster than any of us anticipated. In minutes, my cafe was submerged again, far worse than before. Tables and chairs floated, shelves toppled, and my carefully crafted displays were destroyed. I felt a wave of panic unlike anything I had experienced. All our hard work, all our efforts, were at the mercy of the storm. Yet, amid the chaos, something remarkable unfolded. The community I had come to love gathered, refusing to let fear paralyze them. Fishermen waded through waist-deep water to secure boats, mothers lifted children to safer ground, teenagers formed human chains to rescue valuables. I realized then that wealth, privilege, or status meant nothing in moments like these. What mattered was courage, unity, and compassion. Ramon held my hand as we navigated the flooded streets. "We'll get through this," he said, his voice steady even as water surged around us. I clung to his words, drawing strength from him, from the people, from the unwavering sense of Bayanihan. Over the next few days, we worked tirelessly to save what we could. Volunteers arrived from neighboring villages, offering tools, food, and manpower. Strangers became family. Together, we salvaged furniture, cleared debris, and secured the cafe once more. It was exhausting, both physically and emotionally, but there was a profound sense of purpose in the struggle. During this crisis, I witnessed the depth of human resilience in ways I had never imagined. I saw Ramon lead teams of volunteers, his calm and decisive nature inspiring everyone around him. I saw mothers share their only food with those in need, children comfort frightened elders, and neighbors comfort each other amidst the wreckage. Each act of kindness reinforced the truth I had discovered months ago. Hope is not abstract. It is alive in the actions of people who care for one another. As the storm subsided, the aftermath was devastating. The streets were flooded, homes were damaged, and my cafe, though intact, bore scars of the flood. Yet, standing in the midst of the chaos, I felt a strange sense of peace. I had faced fear, loss, and uncertainty, and I had survived, not alone, but with a community that had embraced me as one of their own. I decided that rebuilding again was not just a choice, but a responsibility. This cafe had become more than a business. It was a symbol of resilience, love, and community. With the help of neighbors and volunteers, we began restoration once more, this time with stronger structures, better drainage, and a renewed sense of purpose. Every nail hammered and every wall painted was a testament to the human spirit, to the bonds forged through adversity. Through this experience, I learned lessons that no luxury, education, or upbringing in Moscow could teach me. I learned the power of vulnerability, admitting fear, asking for help, and leaning on others. I learned that true wealth is measured not in money, but in relationships, trust, and shared experiences. I learned that love is not just passion or romance, but mutual support, shared struggle, and the courage to rebuild after life's storms. Ramon and I grew closer through this ordeal. We shared quiet evenings on the rooftop of the cafe, watching the sun rise over the floodwaters recede. He held my hand as we reflected on the trials we had endured, and I realized that I had found a partner not just in love, but in life itself. The cafe eventually reopened, brighter, stronger, and more vibrant than ever. Tourists were drawn not only by the colorful walls and delicious fusion cuisine, but by the story behind it. The story of a Russian woman who arrived with nothing but hope, who faced destruction and despair, and who rebuilt with the help of a community that had become her family. I often look back on the life I left in Moscow, the life of superficial luxury and hollow accolades. I do not regret it, but I understand now that true fulfillment cannot be bought. It must be lived, shared, and earned through love, resilience, and the willingness to face life head-on, even when the storms come. The people of Cebu taught me the meaning of hope and human connection. Ramon showed me that love can flourish in unexpected places and that shared struggle strengthens bonds beyond measure. My cafe, once a dream, now stands as a beacon of possibility, a testament to what can be achieved when fear is met with courage and despair is met with unity. As I prepare coffee for the first customers of the morning, I watch the neighborhood awaken, children laughing, vendors shouting greetings, and families sharing breakfast. I realize that happiness is not about perfection, control, or status. It is about presence, contribution, and love. The storms may come again, but I am no longer afraid. I have learned to rise, rebuild, and embrace life fully, with open heart and unshakable hope. And in that moment, I finally understand what I came here seeking: a life lived fully, a heart touched deeply, and a soul transformed by the warmth of a community that had become my family. Cebu is no longer just a place on a map, it is home,